Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending today's webinar. And so today I will be walking you through TechXL's application lifecycle management solution called DevSuite. And I will also show you how DevSuite can help you comply or help you get in compliance with the medical device software development and how it can plug in into your workflow process. Before I get started with showing you the DevSuite demo, I would first want to talk a little about our company, TechXL. So we were founded in 1995. We shipped our first product in 1997. We are a 100% privately owned company, and we are headquartered here in Lafayette, California. We have presence across the globe. We have offices in North Carolina, China, and UK as well. We initially started off with basic issue tracking and defect management tool, but eventually we evolved into the entire application lifecycle management suite, which is popularly known as DevSuite. Apart from DevSuite, TechXL has another business line called as the Service Suite, and it has the IT support and help desk software, but it is again fully integrated with DevSuite. So as a medical device manufacturer, you can get connected with your customers via the IT support and again help them solve their enhancements and bugs via the DevSuite system, again in compliance with the different medical device standards. But in today's webinar, we will focus mainly on the DevSuite product line and the different modules in the DevSuite product line. These are some of the customers. We are spread across multiple domains, industry verticals. We have more than 1,500 customers. Specifically, we have 1,200 DevSuite customers across 43 countries, and we serve the top 500 enterprises as well. So getting on to the DevSuite, a little bit about the DevSuite and what are the different core components and artifacts and modules involved in DevSuite so that you can get a high-level understanding of where we are going with this and what the product demo is going to be like. So we have three, I would say we have four core products. One for the requirements management, which we call as DevSpec. So requirements management basically encourages the teams to establish a collaborative environment between the stakeholders and the internal teams, and they together can define and validate the product requirements. Once the requirements have been reviewed and approved, the next step is to start implementing those requirements. But before implementing, we need to plan the development process. So that's where our DevPlan module comes in, and using that you can plan your development cycles and your release cycles, and you can set up a repeatable process for your development so that with every release or every build you can follow the same quality process or same delivery process. Once we have defined the development project structure, the next step is to start managing the development tasks and start to get into the details of the tasks. So that's where our DevTrack module comes in, and using that you can manage both the development tasks and defects at the same time. Lastly, our DevTest module, using which you can actually verify your product. You can create or define test cases right from the requirements so that you can complete the loop and you can validate and verify a product just using a single solution. And any bugs that are uncovered during the testing can directly be submitted as defects into the DevTrack system. So you get a complete, or I would say you get full traceability right from your requirements to your development to your testing items. All the four modules that you see are powered by our central knowledge base called as KnowledgeWise. So in the knowledge base, you can store your central company-wide documents, and you can share those documents across all these multiple modules. So let's say requirements, or you want to have certain development methodology standards, so you can create knowledge items or help topics in that, and then you can share it across the different modules. A little bit about our add-on modules. So these core modules are covered by the portfolio, which is called as our DevPPM. So it helps you to manage the entire project lifecycle and get an overall progress status at a portfolio level and identify risks and help to basically take more informed business decisions. Versioning is basically our way to integrate with the most popular source code management tools. So as one of the requirements of the medical device industry is that you have to, the solution or the application lifecycle management solution has to be integrated with the source code management tool. So that's what the versioning does. You can integrate with any of the tools like Subversion, Portforce, Clear Case Accurate, so on and so forth. And in today's demo, I will take this opportunity to actually demo you the Subversion integration as well, so that I can give you an idea of how the development tasks and defects can be directly associated to your code files. Moving on, these are some of our DevSuite highlights. DevSuite is an end-to-end solution for your requirements, testing, and development. Basically tracks your entire application lifecycle. And it also helps your product to evolve. Basically, you can start with just a basic product idea, and it will help you to execute that idea and finally deliver that idea to your customers. As I mentioned earlier, we have full traceability, which enables you to perform verification and validation functions on your product. We have a dedicated requirements management tool using various access controls and its own workflow, so that the stakeholders can participate and also track the progress of the product along with the internal teams. So requirements management basically enables the stakeholders to define very high-level requirements, and then for the internal teams can take those requirements, break it down into lower level requirements, and then start to assign those to the development. Also, we have a product roadmap feature, which is a very powerful tool in laying out the strategy for your product across a certain time frame. So once the requirements have been defined, the product owners can easily create a product roadmap and define that these are the set of requirements that would be available in Q1 or so, in the specific months. So the benefit of creating a product roadmap is that the development team can then use that product roadmap as a base, and then they can create their development cycles or can set the timeline for their development release cycles based on this product roadmap. There is an overall product planning tool, so right from the high-level details of the product, you can plan up to small bits and pieces of the product as well, and it's completely integrated, completely tracked. So any change that you make in the system will be recorded, and audit trail will be maintained for each and every change in the system, and also it has a lot of integration points and a lot of user identity points, so you can set the product in such a way that for every change the user will be required to log in and to enter his username and password. DevSuite can be easily customized for agile development. So if you have a smaller team or maybe even a larger team following an agile development, so we have out-of-box solutions for agile development as well, and you will get the artifacts that are involved in agile, like the sprint planning, iteration, storyboard, etc. functionality in DevSuite. Lastly, the test management piece, which is again creating the test cases and then defining your test coverage and then executing those tests, and again linking those tests back to your requirements, hence achieving the full traceability between all the three modules. Okay, a little bit about the DevSuite process model. So here we have any application you see would always first start with the requirements definition and requirements creation, and then the requirements would be the one which would drive the testing as well as the development. So based on this same exact principle, our DevSuite is modeled in such a way that it would support the structure and it would be suitable for any development methodology or any workflow process that the company would be following. So you start by entering the requirements into the system. Once the requirements have been approved and reviewed, you can start populating the development product backlog. And then there are really two parallel processes. One is the development process, which goes through the basic development cycles or sprint cycles or iterations. And the another parallel process would be to start creating or defining test cases right from those requirements. So once the test cases has been defined, you start to define the release plan and the test cycles. And if you note here, the development cycles are also in sync with the the test cycles as well. So any defects discovered during the testing get directly submitted to either to the product backlog or sprint backlog, and then the development team can prioritize those defects and assign them to the corresponding sprint, and then those can be fixed and applied to the working software. So this is the process, high-level process of what DevSuite is based on, and I will walk you through the entire process using the live product, and I will create a requirement from the scratch and take you through the development and testing phases and submit a defect as well. And during this demo, I will show you how these processes also help you comply with the medical device standards as well. So a little bit about, or let's focus on the medical device standards. So DevSuite complies or helps the medical device software development to comply with the following industry standards. The first would be the FDA General Principles of Software Validation. Next would be the IEC 62304, and lastly the FDA's CFR 21 Part 11. These are all available out of the box in DevSuite, and also we have pre-configured templates for the teams to directly get started with the solution. A little bit about the FDA General Principle for Software Validation. So this particular standard dictates that the tool or the ALM solution needs to have a full traceability for all artifacts through the entire life cycle. And I will walk you through how you can achieve the full traceability, and I will show you in a traceability report of the requirements that we create. In order to achieve the general principle for software validation, the product goes through continuous validation and verification processes, and it is directly plugged into the product workflow. Also, any changes that are made to the requirement will be notified, the development and the testing team will immediately be notified using the flags, so that they can then further acknowledge the requirement change and can further basically make their changes to the development and testing processes accordingly. So the IEC 62304, there are multiple requirements under the IEC 62304 compliance, which also overlap with some of the other medical device standards. But in specific, in order for the software the medical device companies to comply with this standard, the DevSuite ALM solution helps you to establish a repeatable quality process, so that the process that you use to create the initial set of releases or the initial product, you can easily replicate those processes to to maintain the software or to release the product in subsequent releases. It also enables you to place or put in various checks and conditions right into the workflow so that the team is strictly following the method. So let's say, for example, after a certain state of transition in development, you require your teams to attach a document or to test the product or to fulfill some criteria. So you could put in some checks and conditions right into the workflow, and unless those conditions are fulfilled, your task won't be moved to another state of transition. As I mentioned earlier, for any change in the product, we have a detailed tracking history and audit trail of a single record, and it's with the timestamp information. Also, it shows, not only shows the timestamp and the user, but it also shows what was the previous value and what was the new value. So what was changed and from what. And again, the audit trails are available in a exportable report format, and then these reports can further be printed out for physical records. In terms of verification, any defects that are discovered during the testing process, those will automatically be submitted to the development cycle. So the system keeps track of those defects as well, so that it directly gets associated to the test. And lastly, it has integration with the source code management tool. So any changes, any code changes are tracked at the task level, and you can generate reports based on that too. The FDA CFR 21 Part 11 compliance requires heavy use of electronic signatures and electronic meanings. So that means that any change made in the system should be recorded and should be made by a valid or authentic user. So we have plugged in the electronic signature capabilities right into the product workflow. So whenever a user triggers any state or any transition, he will be prompted to enter the username and password, and only when he is authenticated he can make any changes. And then any changes made by that particular user will again be recorded in form of an audit trail, and those audit trails will be available in a report format and can be further printed out. So let's look at the live tool, and let's look at the different components in DevSuite, and I'll walk you through the process by creating a sample requirement, and then and also during the demo I'll show you the different medical device components that I just talked about. So let's just switch to my browser, and let me make it a full screen so that we can utilize the entire screen space. Okay. So the way our product is organized, on the top, if you see, we have the different modules that I talked about in the start of this webinar. So we have the requirements management piece, we have the planning, tracking, testing, and knowledge base, and these are the two add-on modules which basically will give you an overall progress. Specifically, the portfolio will give you an overall progress of what's happening in these modules, and the upper management can take informed business decisions. So we have a very fancy dashboard. In this dashboard, you can add reports from any of these modules. So here, if you see, I have all kinds of different widgets enabled, and each widget contains a different kind of a report. So this report shows me the development progress, and it shows me a report of priority versus state. This particular report shows me the test cycle process and updates, and what are the different states and the different tasks under each of the states for each of these test cycles. So likewise, you can add as many reports as you want, and you can create or personalize your own dashboard as well. So let's jump into the requirements view, and let's start by creating one sample requirement so that we can use that requirement to create development items and test cases as well. So just a brief overview of the requirements piece. On the left, we have a very flexible project tree structure. So you can either break it down into multiple products or multiple releases of the same product. And you can create as many folder structures as you want. We have three major views in which you can manage your requirements. The one that we are viewing right now is called the grid view. Basically, just in a table format, shows you a fancy detail frame at the bottom, and using which you can modify and add the details of the selected requirement. Then we have the relationship preview, using which you can see the requirements relationship, and you can actually establish a relationship on the fly as well. So let's say the new link page requirement is actually a part of my HTML edit box, so I can just drag it on top of it, and then a new requirement or a new child requirement will be defined for this. So even in your medical device development, you have a lot of technical functionality or technical requirements or functional requirements, and you require to break it down into multiple levels. So this requirements management tool can help you achieve that, and you can go or you can create unlimited levels of parent-child relationship amongst the requirements. The percentage complete that you see here is actually driven by the development. So it shows that this particular requirement is 69% complete or 79% complete, and this is a roll-up of the current items under the DevTrack module or under development. So let's go to our grid view, and let's just create a new requirement. I would just say, let's create a new requirement and just sample description. Just a basic set of requirements, and now I have the new requirement created. Now in this, in the requirements management piece itself, I have my own defined workflow, and I have put in some checks and conditions so that unless I move my requirement or unless my requirement is into a particular progress status, I cannot actually assign it to development. So let's just see, currently my requirement is in to be committed status. Let's see if I can assign it to development. No. So it says that your requirement cannot be assigned to development. This is because of the checks and conditions. So in order to enable that, I will have to trigger my transition, which says committed and start development. So this means that this requirement has been approved by all my team members, and now I am ready to implement it or ready to send it to my development team. So I have committed that, and now I just want to save it. Now as soon as I commit and click save, it gives me a pop-up window which basically indicates the electronic signature for your FDA CFR Part 11, and then it will ask me to enter my user identification. And once I enter that, this information will then be recorded in my audit trail or under my history section. So my requirement now is under development, and now I am free to assign it to my development cycles. So here, if you see, I've got a user story created for the corresponding requirement. I would want to select a development space, which is a new dev space. Just click OK. And some set of default tasks are already created. I can choose to further customize these, but for this demo purpose, I would just use the set of predefined development tasks. And I would want to assign it to my iteration 1 in development, and just click OK. So now these requirements have gone into implementation, and these development tasks will be taken over by the development team, and they will individually track the tasks in there. But before I move on to show you the development piece, there is another parallel process in requirements, or once the requirements have been approved, that is creating the test cases. So let's, since we have approved the requirements, let's just create the test cases for these, and I have linked my test management project to it. and I just want to create a new test case. I would say new, and I have mapped my product description to the test procedure, but I am again free to modify these as well. So I can say steps to test this requirement, and then I can just say 1, maybe 2, something like that, and then I can also specify my expected results if I want. So let's just go ahead and maybe just save this. I just get a tracking history of who created that and just simply close this. So now I have used my requirement to define both my development and test cases, and this is how we will achieve the traceability. So just to give you an idea, I would just simply switch to my traceability tab. I would say linked development items, and I can see what are the different development items linked along with some owners and progress status. And similarly, I will see my test cases created. Now, as and when I will start working on these items, the progress status and the updates will be pushed on to the requirements, and the team can look at these at the requirement level. So let's switch to the tracking piece and see how the requirements look like in there. So we created our requirements under the iteration 1 folder. So here, if I open my user story, so here I can see I have the 4 requirements. I can simply choose to assign it to maybe different owners in here, and even let's say Windows development. I would just want to assign it to Terry Johnson and submit it. So now once a task is under development, then you have the development piece has its own workflow, and you can say you can trigger the workflow right from the status. So let's say my developer now gets a notification, email notification saying that, okay, I have been assigned a new requirement and I need to start working on it. I would open that development task. I would see what are the different task details. I would say, okay, the time remaining is maybe 6 hours now, and I would just want to trigger this transition, and I just want to inform my team that, okay, I have started work on this. So when I save that, I will again get an electronic signature, request for electronic signature, and I would enter that as well and click OK. So if you see the changes that I make now, maybe I have selected my platform, maybe I say that this is a high priority, and just save this information. All these changes are recorded under the audit trail, which is one of the requirements for the 62304 standard. And here, if you see, I have a timestamped information, change log, and it says change platform from a blank value to iOS, and similarly for the other fields as well. So let's just submit this. Now, once the developer notifies that, okay, I have, I have started to progress, I have started to work on this development item, the next logical step is that he would go into his code files and would start actually coding. So I have a code file set up, just a basic SVN project. Let's say he's working on the Android file, maybe something like this, and let's say changed, and I would just want to save this, and then I'll just say SVN commit, and I would say coding done. Once I do that, I will have the option to actually link this code file to my actual development task so that I can keep a record. I would say coding done, and here if you see linked dev track issues, I would just want to add this issue and browse to my issue, and this was the requirement or the task that I've been working on. I would say okay, and then simply submit this. So now the commit has gone through, and I would just click OK. Now if I return to my development item in here, and I have a subversion tab listed here, so it shows that, okay, for this development task, what are the different code files that I have changed it along with the SVN revision number and some additional information. So basically, as part of the requirement from IEC 62304, this is the software configuration management integration piece, so that you can track all your tasks right up to the code level. So once the development has been done, there is a parallel process that's going on in the testing. So testing, if you note that I have defined, I had created a new requirement in here. Maybe I chose a different, maybe I chose a different folder in here, but I can simply just move this item to my customer requirements. So now I have a new requirements definition. I can modify this, but just for the demo purpose, I want to start execution of that test case. So in one of my existing test cycles, I just want to add coverage, or just want to add that new requirement. So I would simply say add coverage and would select my basic environment permutations. Just keep this selected. And under the customer requirement, I want to say that, okay, mark my add coverage. Okay, I can choose one of the, maybe, one of the existing projects, maybe, existing test cases. Click next. It gives me a list of all the different tests that needs to be executed as part of this test cycle, and just maybe finish this. So once that has been done, once you have the set of test cases, you will start executing the test, and as and when you encounter any bugs. So let's actually choose one of these, and or maybe I have a test cycle that is currently under progress. I have a bunch of testing tasks, and as soon as I say that, okay, this has been failed, or maybe this has been failed, so the next logical step once the test fail is to create a defect, and this defect will be directly submitted into the DevSuite project, and I would just click OK. And now here I can actually select which sub-project basically I want to submit. So I would just want to choose my current iteration that I've been working on. I would say this as critical and leave the other fields maybe just by default. Simply submit this. So now I have just submitted my defect right into the development piece, and now the developer will get notified that a new defect has been submitted. So as a point in, as a part of the medical device, a standard verification is one of the most important pieces. So in this way, you are saying that, okay, I have verified this product, but this has failed, this test has failed, and I have correspondingly submitted a defect into my development for fixing, so that the developer gets notified that, okay, I need to fix this bug. So here, if you see, a new defect has been submitted under the corresponding development or the requirement user story. The last piece or I would say the most important piece in the DevSuite is to notify the development and the testing teams of any changes that have been made to the requirements, because that will also enable you to perform continuous verification and validation on a product. So let's just choose this new requirement that we created. Let's make a change to this, and I would just want to say maybe, let's say requirement and new change or something, new change, and save this. So as soon as I save the requirement or I save the changes on the requirement, it will show me that, okay, I have associated development and testing tasks, and it will ask me to basically select, or it will give me the option to flag the changes to the development and the testing items. So I can choose to flag all the development tasks, or I could just cherry pick any of these and just inform those tasks. So here, just let's keep all this selected, and here I just simply want to click OK. So now a flag will be generated or triggered to the corresponding testing, tracking and testing items. So if I go back to my development, as soon as a flag is generated for the development task, the corresponding team current owners will be notified via email that a flag has been generated and there is some change in the requirement or there is some change to the task. So then the developer can simply come in, open the flag, look at the description of the requirement, and can further acknowledge the change. And let's say he has acknowledged, and he can say, okay, I have acknowledged and change and flow successful. Likewise, all the corresponding or respective task owners would come in and would either choose to reject or would choose to accept the change, and accordingly these would affect the status at the requirements level. Similarly, in the testing piece, for any change in the requirements, a flag will be generated to the test cases, and I could perform the similar operation. I could click on my change, and the QA team can choose to basically accept or reject the change. So let's go back to the requirements piece and see how the changes look like under the requirement that we changed, and the product owner can now get an indication that, okay, these two users or these two tasks are still open and they haven't acknowledged the change, so they can then take appropriate decisions and can communicate to the corresponding owners and inform them of the change as well. The last piece in the as part of the DevSuite or as part of the complete verification validation is the full traceability report, which is also one of the most important aspects in the medical device development compliance. So you simply choose to create a traceability report for one of these requirements. So let me just close this so that I have a full view here. So this is kind of the traceability report once you have all your requirements defined. So the first section shows what are the different set of requirements along with the statuses. The next section shows the linked development items. So it shows what are the different development development tasks that have been created along with the status. And lastly, it shows the QA test as well. So it shows what are the different QA tests that have been executed in order to verify these requirements and these development items along with the status. Now I can simply choose to actually modify this traceability report, and I can say that, okay, give me only give me the requirements that have that don't have any test cases associated. So a very simple and a very efficient way to do that is you just define a ad hoc query for that or a search result. And like you see here, there is a option to basically select select the set of requirements without the test cases or without the test template. So here I can say, give me all the requirements that have no linked testing tasks or no linked dev test items or maybe no linked development items, and I can search for these. So it will give me a result that, okay, these are the requirements that have not been assigned to development or that don't have any test cases. So using this, there is an indication to the development team that, okay, these requirements are not complete and these need to be further implemented and to be further verified. So unless these requirements are, fulfilled, we cannot actually release the product. So this is how basically the various modules are organized in DevSuite, and how you can also achieve, or how DevSuite can help you achieve medical device compliance with the different device standards like the FDA software general principle for software validation or the IEC 62304 and and also the FDA CFR 21 Part 11. We've been working on the product continuously, and we've been adding a lot of functionality, features, and we do accept a lot of enhancement requests from the customers and make it part of our official release. So feel free to go on to our website, look at our white papers on the medical device compliance, because it has like a one-to-one, point-to-point comparison as to how DevSuite can comply or how DevSuite complies with the specific points in that standard. And I would be very happy to help you give a one-on-one demo as well of the product, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions surrounding DevSuite. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet. Now we can, as Vineet mentioned, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the question tab, and then we can go through them. Vineet, looks like right now we have one question.
Okay.
It's with regards to DevSuite. Is and how is DevSuite scalable?
Sure, that's a very good question. DevSuite is basically customized or is created to suit smaller teams or even larger enterprises. So as your team grows or as your product grows, DevSuite will be actually growing with the product. So there are multiple ways in which DevSuite can be easily scaled to your project size. So let's say you have a large team and you have multiple offshore teams. So we have, DevSuite has a capability called DevSuite multi-site, using DevSuite's sync service, you can have a localized installation of DevSuite at each of the offshore teams, and then using that sync service, you can sync the data in real time, so that for the local teams, everyone sees a localized performance of DevSuite. And also in terms of the scalable project framework, so you can, if you have more team members or if you have larger multiple teams working on a single project, you can either expand the project to create multiple such projects, or you could just add more and more functionality to the same project, and it will expand to your needs.
Okay. I see a couple questions regarding the recording. Yes, again, today's webinar will be recorded, and we will send a link out to all of you who attended. And I believe that is all for today. Thank you very much. If you do come across any other questions, feel free. You can reach out to Vineet directly or to myself, and we'll be happy to answer and provide them. Thank you very much, Vineet.
Sure.
And thank you to everyone, and have a good day.